You're with us at the Global HR Forum 2021. We're finally going to have the final session of this year's forum, session A-7. The topic of the session is female entrepreneurs changing everyday life through digital transformation. In the startup market, we see a growing number of female entrepreneurs, and they are trying to address everyday pain points, and there are various new ideas coming out in the market. We have Life Lab, founded by Hyunju. That is a matching platform for household cleaning services, and we have 8%, a P2P financial company created by Lee Hyojin. And HeyJoice was founded by Naree to help with female businessmen and their careers. And we will be able to hear their experiences as female entrepreneurs. And now we will hear from the two presenters, and then Naree will not only speak but also serve as a moderator. I hope that you will enjoy this very last session. Please welcome them with a big round of applause. Okay, please go ahead. I will serve as the moderator of the session, and I will also give a presentation. My name is Naree Lee. I'm very happy to be here with you. Each of us will give a short presentation, 20 minutes each, and then this will leave us with 30 minutes for panel discussion. Now, I'm going to invite Hyunju, CEO of Life Lab, for her presentation. You may go to the podium. Hello, everyone. I am CEO of Cleaning Lab. My name is Hyunju. Hyunju. I'm very happy to meet you. What I'm going to be talking about in my presentation, well, actually, I had a hard time deciding on the title of the presentation. In other programs, I usually shared my startup experience, but in my presentation, I decided to talk about the new trends in the housework area and this home cleaning application. We call this house chores. And there are new trends in house chores, and there are new job opportunities. Let me briefly introduce myself before I go into the main part of the presentation. I had an IT career. So more than 20 years, I worked at various IT companies, including Kakao and NCSoft. So right now, I am offering IT solutions and services, but in the past, I was involved in developing games and emojis and many other programs. So I had this office experience for 20 years, and then I started my company 5 years ago. So let me explain the background behind my career change. So I've been working in the IT industry for more than 20 years, but also I'm a mother and I am a working mother. So when I go home, I have all this work that I have to do because I have 3 sons. And imagine this whole thing involving raising 3 boys. There's a lot of house chores I had to do. I would come home at 7 or 8 in the evening, and then I would find this pile of dirty dishes, and I would have to do laundry. So as soon as I got home, I had to do cleaning, I had to do dishwashing, I also had to set up dinner, I had to go and pick up my kids. So it's not unique for me, but a lot of working moms can relate to this. It's almost like having 2 jobs. So as you may know, we always have these house chores that had to be taken care of. You're very busy, you have your professional career, you have a job, full-time job, but then when you come home, you have to deal with this house chores. And especially these days, family members are pretty much staying home because we're all working from home and studying and learning from home. So what can we do? And how can we use digital technology to lessen this burden? I'm going to talk about four main trends. The first one is outsourcing of housework. Outsourcing used to be utilized by companies, which means that you will leave something to the hands of experts and professionals, but you need to outsource housework as well. I have three sons, so from the get-go, I didn't think that I would be able to do everything myself, so I got some helping hands. I would pay for their services, and also my husband and I would have outsourced housework. But even when you have maybe only one child or no child at all, still there's a lot of these people who are outsourcing their housework. I took a look at the statistics, and there is 490 trillion won of unpaid housework. The estimated value of housework is 490 trillion won. And you may say that, wait a minute, I've been doing all this work unpaid. And we have to recognize that housework is very valuable. And housework occupies a large portion of the day, about 2 hours per day, which was quite surprising to me as well. So housework requires many hours of labor, but a lot of times this particular kind of labor has not been recognized properly, and a lot of people didn't give much thought to it. But we have many working mothers, and a lot of people have been using or paying for housekeeping services because otherwise you would have to spend at least 3 hours a day doing house chores. But you want to spend that time for yourself rather than spending that time taking care of the house. So you would pay someone else to do housework for you. And this market is 8 trillion won in size. Of course, this may be actually larger than that, but it is not easy to get statistics because in the past it was rather informal economy and there were cash transactions for these types of services. But only recently, credit card payments are allowed. So I think that this market is actually much more than 8 trillion won, including cleaning and laundry, and also they include care services, child care and patient care. If we include them, then the industry is much more than that, to be around 15 trillion won. And now there's this transition from unpaid housework to paid housework. But I think that this industry will grow even further, maybe tenfold or more than that in the future, because there are several leading startup companies in this universe, including my company. So we have cleaning services, and also we have child care services and patient care services. So there are these new companies that are offering care services and housework services. This means that this industry is growing and there's a need for innovation in this market. So I believe that this industry will continue to grow and there will be more innovation taking place in this space. I'm going to go into more details later on, but once again, people do not want to spend their precious time doing house chores, but they would rather pay someone else to do this type of work for you. The second trend is that there is this rise of new customer groups. I am very confident that this industry will continue to grow. It is based on the data coming from my company, and I think that this industry will grow exponentially. It's because there is an increasing number of single-person households, and they are willing to pay for house chore services. And initially, I thought that the main targets would be working parents. So these working parents living in modest size of apartments with children, they would want to pay for housekeeping services. But once we launched our service, we realized that there were so many single-person households living in smaller apartments who would use these services. Actually, more than 30% of all customers are single-person households. Of course, we have working parents and dual-income households, but we also have single-income households who are tired of housework, and also we have senior citizens who are using our services. And people say that we have more than 10 million single-person households. The statistics on the slide says 6 million, but I think we have more than 10 million single-person households, and the number will continue to increase. So I believe that the number of single-person households will continue to increase, and this will lead to the growth of the market. And we have more and more women working, and in many cases, women had to work because they had to pay for their loans, and also they have to raise their children. So we have 6 million dual income households with these working parents. Therefore, I believe that there will be growing demand for housekeeping services. And in the next 3 to 4 years, this industry will grow exponentially. This is our estimation. This is data from our company. Most of our customers, their average apartment size is 27 평. You may think that those who live in very big apartments will use housekeeping services, but that's not true because the majority of our customers live in medium-sized apartments and they desperately need housekeeping services. So these single-person households and double-income households, they all go to work in the morning, and then these housekeeping managers, they will come to these empty apartments and do their job. And we have the subscription service, and 65% of the customers are subscribers. In other words, they use housekeeping services on a regular basis. I think I am a beneficiary of the service. I have my housekeeping manager come to my home twice a week. That's how we can keep our home clean and organized. And once you get used to it, you will realize how wonderful it is, and you will be almost addicted to the service. And as I mentioned before, we have these non-face-to-face reservation, and 80% of the customers reserve our services via mobile or application. In the past, housekeeping managers would receive monthly salary, but these days, people would use the service maybe twice a month. So the monthly expense would be around 110,000 won. So it's not a lot of money. And even the stay-at-home moms, they would want to use the service out of convenience. So I think there is a more increase in usage. As I mentioned before, as I go to work, I will ask for the manager to come and clean up. You may think that for the first visit, you may have to be there in person to give some guide, but you can set up some details and you can make some specific requests in the application. For instance, you can specify the location of the garbage bag and what specific services you need. And then the manager will be able to check the customer's requests, and then they will carry out their work based on these requests. And the third trend is that, as I mentioned, this industry is growing and there's non-face-to-face reservation. And You may wonder whether the pandemic has changed this trend. I received so many questions regarding this. In other words, the impact of COVID-19 on our business. So I want to talk about that. In conclusion, our revenue has increased actually, and we were able to achieve record high revenue after the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. And let me tell you why. As you may know very well, because of the COVID-19, we had to work from home. So your home is not just home, but also your office, your workspace. And in the morning, it's not just me, but I'm sure it's like that for you. You would blow dry your hair and you would not even have time to make up your bed, and you would just leave home to go to work. And then your office is nice and organized. But imagine that you have to work from home, and your home, when your home is not organized, when your home is not clean, then you may feel rather depressed. So that's why a lot of people who work from home would use housekeeping service, and while they work in one of the rooms, the manager would come and clean up the apartment. And also you have these kids who stay home and they take online classes, and you may want these managers to come and clean up after your kids as well. Also, as people spend more time at home and work there, and some companies got rid of the actual office spaces. For instance, Jikbang decided to get rid of the physical office spaces. So then some companies provide financial support for their employees to use cleaning service or laundry service. So actually, we get a lot of requests from companies. They want to provide cleaning services for their employees. And actually, Hyojin Lee talked to me about this service as well, and we're going to sign a contract. I think this is a very new trend that has happened after the COVID-19 pandemic. And in my final chapter, this is the fourth trend. I would like to talk about this new job category, home cleaning expert. I like to talk about this trend of positioning these kinds of jobs as a new expert area. You may wonder what kinds of people would come as a housekeeping manager. You would prefer someone who is meticulous and who is very detailed and who is capable. Of course, you would want to know who would come. And in our case, we call these housekeepers managers. And the reason why we call them managers is because our definition of housekeeping service is different. It's not just helping you with some house chores, but rather these managers have expertise. They have their own strength. And in order to help them become experts, we provide them with training. So only those who receive training can be registered as managers, and they can work for cleaning lab, and those who comply with our rules and regulations. When you take a look at the profile of these managers, their average age is 55. So these older women in their 50s, their children are all grown up, and then they have this time available. So they would sign up for this. And some people work two jobs. They're insurance salesperson, and then or they have some other job, but then they have some time left, and they would work as house cleaning manager as well. And number one reason why they sign up for cleaning lab job is because it is very flexible. if they need to take care of their family or if they have other urgent situations, then they may not take up the assignment. So it is very flexible. They would take up cleaning assignments depending on their situations and availability. So on a monthly basis, they will only take up 14 assignments per month. So this is an average. It means that they can increase the number of assignments or they can reduce the number of assignments. It's very flexible. And about 70% of these managers are inexperienced. It means that there are more and more people who are coming into this market. They are similar to gig workers. These days, we do not just have one job, but you can have multiple jobs. And there are a lot of these managers who enjoy utilizing their time and engaging in multiple jobs. Recently, I had a conversation with a manager, and she says she's very happy doing this job. And there was this one very interesting point that she said. She said that using the app is really cool, and the application allows high level of accuracy in this whole work process, because in the past traditionally we would just have some phone conversations, but there was no contract, there was no commitment, and you would go and you would find that situations are not something that you would expect. But now the application is there to help you with, and then there's very specific request or specific guideline, and you can also find the exact location of the place that you need to go. If you have to go to work where you don't know anything, you don't know what to expect, it will be very difficult. But the application is very detailed and is informative, and we provide training to these managers so that they can become home cleaning experts. So we offer offline training and online training and continuous training, because house chores, if you want to do it well, then it's not easy. It takes expertise. Imagine that you go to someone else's home, and if you are trying to do this job well, then it's not easy because it is a new environment and it takes some skills. So that's why we keep providing training. We have 46,000 managers who have received training, and they are nationwide. And a lot of people really appreciate this opportunity. And this is what they said. One son of this manager sent me an email, said, "Hello, I am the son of this woman, and I actually learned that my mother was struggling with depression, and then she's now working as a manager, and she is very happy. She's out there working and making money, so she's very happy about that." So I was also very touched by this message from the son of one of the managers in my company. So I hope that there will be more and more such managers who would be satisfied in their work. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
연주 대표님 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, and thank you for keeping exactly within the allocated time. Next, we would like to invite Ms. Lee Hyojin, who is the CEO of 8%. A big round of applause, please. Good afternoon. We are the first to actually conduct P2P finance, and I am Lee Hyojin of 8%. We are talking about female entrepreneurs changing everyday life through digital transformation. Thank you for this invitation. Well, finance is a big part of our lives. Everyone talks about how much profit that we are making on our investment. 8% is a company that is conducting digital transformation in the financial sector. So this is my table of contents. 8% is a company that is achieving growth and technical development in the personal loan field. We match the investors and borrowers online. We usually have borrowers who are non-banking customers with a credit level of grade 4 to 7, and they wish to receive a better interest rate compared to other financial organizations, and the investors are targeting a return of 5 to 8%. So you can see that we are loaning to the borrowers, and this was only possible for licensed financial institutions, but through 8%, investors who are individuals can enjoy this business model as if they are a financial institution. So in the market, perhaps in the Korean market, if we take a look at the credit market, you may think that it is quite saturated, but that is not true. Especially, there are not many financial institutions that satisfy the demand for online loans for mid-credit customers. A lot of the financial institutions want to work with mid-credit customers, but they have not been so successful. But 8% is meeting the need for online loans for mid-credit customers. And so we are able to successfully provide credit to these borrowers. And if we take a look at the percentage of within the population, they actually make up 48% of the total population. And if you take a look at the bottom right, you can see that they have the lowest loan transactions. Well, if you have high credit ratings, 40 to 50% of them use loans because they can receive a loan from the bank. And the remaining 40 to 60% do not use a loan because they don't have a need. And for those with a low credit rating, they actually have a lot of loans. 60 to 80% of them have loans. And you can see that they have a lot of loans. But what about those with mid-credit ratings? Only 31.3% of them actually use loans. Well, they actually have the demand for loans on par with high credit customers, but it seems that they are not using loans because they lack the service to use loans at reasonable interest rates. And that is why we have the 8% that is born. 8% is a for-profit company, but 8% also creates various social values. So here is our video. You can subscribe within 1 minute. And you can send your money to an affiliated bank account. Then you can make your investment after reading about the investment. And you can make an investment with just a single click.
네, 그리고 저희는 이제 분산 투자를
And we also suggest that you diversify your investment. For example, you're not lending 1 million won or 2 million won to one person, but you can actually diversify your investment. If you are investing 1 million won, you can lend 5,000 won to 200 people. And so even if some of the loans do not work out, then it will not be a big impact on your returns. And if you wish to have a loan, then the preliminary assessment happens in 1 minute. And if you hand in other documentations that are needed, then you are able to receive approval for a loan within 30 minutes. And so we streamlined all of the processes, and we noticed that through 8%, our customers usually try to receive a loan from our company and pay off high interest loans. We believe that by 2030, we will be actually loaning about 100 trillion won to our borrowers, and that will reduce the interest of many households across the country. And we are also creating jobs because we lend to companies who are able to grow and create jobs. And we believe that we have created about 500,000 jobs. And we believe that this social value can be expanded to other companies. And we believe that we can achieve 500,000 in 3 years in terms of job creation. So we are growing in this direction. We are using technology to grow. We have accurate credit ratings using non-face-to-face platforms, and that is why we are using AI technology. We also have technologies to settle bulk training. We also have non-face-to-face certification technology, as well as platform operational skills. So we have brought together an array of technologies and skills to create 8%. Let's talk about the future of digital lending. How will digital lending develop in the future? I believe that we can think about 3 things. First is we need to have loans that are suitable for work and lifestyle trends. For example, loans for gig workers like the workers at LifeLab and platform workers. We believe that there will be more gig workers and platform workers in the future because millennials are becoming gig workers and the retired are becoming gig workers, and they lack the credit to receive loans. For example, they have time and they have income, but the financial institutions, they will not provide them with a loan because they are not regular workers, but because we are utilizing a digital platform and because we base our credits on different types of information, we are able to provide appropriate financial services to gig workers and platform workers. And if we see the growth of gig workers and platform workers, we believe that we will grow as well. We also have embedded lending service. Up until now, if you needed financial services, you needed to find an app and use that app. But now we have seamless connections. For example, if you are purchasing a product or if you're acquiring an asset, we will be able to provide financial services because we will have embedded lending services. And the third direction is lending in the virtual world. Well, many people talk about metaverse these days, and just like other systems, the metaverse also has an economic system. And if there's an economic system in the virtual world, we will see the development of financial services in the virtual world, and we will see a connection with the real world. So through my presentation, I talked about how digitization will be changing financial services, which will then translate into changes in our lives. 8% will keep up with these trends to make sure that we become a part of your lives. Thank you very much.
네. 저는 이 세션
I am the moderator for this session, but I'm also a presenter for this session, so I will continue with my presentation. We have just heard from CEO Lee, and she spoke a little bit shorter than expected. I don't think I could fill up her time, but I will try to keep my presentation short as well so that we could have more time for dialogue amongst the panelists on stage. Having listened to the 2 presentations, I thought, because we saw a lot of English on the 2 presentations and a lot of statistics as well. But I have not prepared an English presentation nor statistics for my presentation. I would just like to talk about my story. And the history and volume of my company is not as long and large as the other two companies, but let me just talk about our story and the market that we are in. The title of my presentation is The Existence or Market of Working Women. Our company is called HeyJoice. I don't know if you have heard of our service. Raise your hand if you've heard of our service. Well, thank you very much. HeyJoice is a platform for the career growth of women. We have a lot of users. Most of them are working at companies, and sometimes they are self-employed or they are freelance workers. Well, I don't know if we use the expression working women these days. Well, we use that word when not many people were working, when not many women were working. So currently at HeyJoice, we have a lot of people who are wage earners. I think about 70 to 80% of them are wage earners, and many people are in the IT industry. And they are in large companies, mid-sized companies, and startups. I think amongst the self-growth platforms, we have a large user base of large companies and startups. So we have an online platform along with offline spaces where we can share experience, knowledge, and information. So it basically facilitates communication. So we have a women's career growth platform, and that may be unfamiliar to Korea, but these platforms have appeared overseas a long time ago, and there is even but we don't see a unicorn in this field, but we do have some larger startups in this sector outside of Korea. So these platforms target women to provide perhaps networking opportunities, co-work spaces, or provide opportunities for personal branding. So there are various forms of services. At HeyJoice, we are working on based on my experience. So I have a lot of fine print here. That's a list of companies that I actually worked for. And the two presenters before me also had a long career before starting their own company. And I want to know what kind of employees they were when they were working at companies. We'll discuss that during the panel discussion. I also worked for 30 years at Samsung. I was an executive at a Samsung company. I also worked at DCamp. I actually founded DCamp. And I also worked as an investor. And I also worked under the Presidential Council on the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and I've worked in the public sector. I also led the online business of LG Life and Health. I also worked as a journalist for 20 years. My last job as a journalist was editor at 중앙 Daily. I also worked at 동아 Daily, 한겨레 Daily, and 세계 Daily. And I also worked at Digital Times and a small paper called Women's Times. And so I've worked as a journalist for a very long time. My first job was at TGI Friday. That was a family restaurant, and I worked on the launch of TGIF. It was a joint venture at that time. I wrote 7 books. So there is a long list of things that I have done in my career. You can see that I was very diligent in living my life. I don't know if I was successful, but I know that I was a very hard worker. I don't think anyone can say that I was not a hard worker. And that made me feel very confident. In my 20s, I was working very hard to catch up. In my 30s, I felt very confident, but I did not have the capabilities to live up to that confidence. And ever since I stepped into my 40s, I started to see the fruit of my work. I was able to create DCamp and write a lot of books. And I felt very proud of myself in my 40s. But after working for about 27 years, I decided that I want to start my own company. At that time, I was an executive at Jail, which is a Samsung company. And there were a lot of opportunities that I received. For example, I participated in important interviews. They were not interviews from the media, but it was interviews to see if I could become an important member of the public sector. And I was quite shocked through that experience. I thought I was a very hard worker. And although I had a very chaotic resume, I thought I could be very proud of what I had achieved. But when I was up for positions that were very important, and when I was up for positions that were male-dominated, and when I was at that juncture in my life, the fact that I was a woman became a big issue. And so I received a lot of questions like this. Were there any difficulties in working as a woman? I think many of you probably received that question, and it doesn't feel good to receive that question. And during the panel discussion, I'm not going to ask you questions about any difficulties as a woman entrepreneur. Maybe I will have questions from the audience that I will inevitably ask you, but I don't like those questions. And they also asked me questions on whether, as a woman, I could be responsible for an enormous budget, whether I can lead an important organization. It didn't feel good to be asked these questions, but I could not say that I don't feel good receiving these questions. But I would always say, I can do well, and it was okay working as a woman. And on my way out from these interviews, I did not feel good. And it's not because of the question itself, it's because of the answers that I was giving to these questions. And so during the weekend, I would be very upset. And I wrote a posting on Facebook. And I have something up here, but I did not write exactly this, but it was along the same lines. I did not have big dreams. I just wanted to live under my name. I wanted to have a sense of presence in this society. I did not want to be called, "Hey lady," when I stepped on the bus. I did not want to be called someone's mother or someone's wife. I just wanted to live as myself. And that's why I worked hard. But despite the outstanding career that I had, I could not understand why I was not able to achieve things that I could achieve. And I did not understand why I was asked these questions at these interviews just because I was a woman. And so I wrote this on Facebook. And I was very surprised because I'm not a celebrity. I'm not that famous. But I got close to 3,000 likes and 280 people shared my posting. And so I started to think, is this an issue for many people in our society? And I wrote on Facebook, would anyone like to drink a cup of coffee with me? And 200 people joined me on that online site. And then offline, 100 people joined me. And so because of that experience, I decided to start a platform that can encourage women's career growth. Well, I had a long career, and so I thought what I experienced was something of the past. I thought it would not be an issue for the women of the present. Of course, there are some differences, but I could see that there were similar issues even for women who are working today. And so I think startup would be a methodology used to find solutions in society, and that is why I started to think about having a startup. And so I started to gather information as I'm preparing for my company. And just like Ms. Yun has mentioned, we have quite a lot of single-person families. You can see that amongst the women in their 30s, over 30% will remain single, and we can see that many women are graduating from college and many women are in management positions. But we still see that there is a wage gap between genders. And so now I know that there are various controversies related to genders, and I believe that when there are controversies, there's always opportunities. So if you take a look here, we are targeting a large group, working women from the age of their 20s to the 40s. That's about 10 million people. And so if we take a look at this market, well, there were not many platforms that looked at this direction. Content business and entertainment businesses were already targeting this group. Well, I don't know if you were wrapped up in the famous TV program that was popular over the summer. I don't think that kind of program could have been planned in the last 3 to 4 years. And if we take a look at the songs of girl groups, they sometimes talk about love, but you can see that women are becoming stronger as they are expressed in these songs, and women are expressed as much more independent than before. And so the society is changing. I have a son who is 27 years old, and he graduated from university this summer. And he needs to find a girlfriend, and perhaps he will get married one day. And so we are thinking about how he can become a great man. And he actually talks about women that is a very different perspective compared to his father. So the world is changing, and I'm experiencing that in my own family. We conducted a survey just after starting our company, and we asked them, what are some challenges in their everyday life? For example, they do not have women that they can look to for the next step, and they feel like they don't have a vision of the next step in their career, and they don't have enough of a leadership, and that they don't have a strong network. And so that is why we have HeyJoice. We have about 20,000 members, and we have a total of 1,100 programs, including conferences and events. These programs are conducted for our members, and in that process, Ms. Yun joined us for many of these events. We have about 1,000 women leaders who are leading these programs. We also have ConJoice, which is Korea's largest subscription-based online conferences every month, and we have about 2,000 people joining us every month. And this month we will have a conference on marketing, and 600 people have already made a payment as early birds. And so you can see that we have great online conferences that are going on our platform. If we take a look at our membership, you can see that 65% of them are between the ages of 25 to 34. This is the age group where they really need to climb up the corporate ladder. But at the same time, we also have 12% of our members who are in their 40s, who have been working for about 20 years or more. And so these older members in their 40s are becoming a source of energy and network and information for the younger women within our platform. And so we are creating a community within our platform. We have 20,000 members, and not all of them, but they are micro-influencers. So we do not spend a lot on marketing. Because our members are micro-influencers, they influence others to join HeyJoice. If we take a look at some customer testimonies, we have topics such as tech and marketing, but they always talk about how the dialogue was frank, how they enjoyed listening to a certain speaker, how they loved how much they loved how relatable the presentations were. And so I think this is the energy that we can have from a very homogeneous group of women who are working. And we hope to open the window for men as well. We are thinking about whether this should be done because we are working side to side within our society. But given this homogeneous group that we have conducted various simulations to see what our platforms would look like if we had the participation of men. In 2019, as you can see, we opened this very beautiful space in Seongneung Station, and we had a lot of offline gatherings. But as you're well aware, we had the outbreak of COVID-19 in early 2019, which was a big change in our society. At that time, we had our services offline, and it was a 100% offline service. But thankfully, we had started the development of our apps 6 months ago, and a lot of the services were available online as well. And so I think our revenues this year is probably 2 to 3-fold compared to the previous year. Of course, it's not on par with our forecasted trajectory, but we hope to reach that trajectory by next year. In 2020, we developed our preparatory webinar system. I cannot play the video for you on this PDF format, but you can see that it's quite similar to Zoom, but it's 4K resolution, and you can see that chatting is possible, and you can send icons, and so it feels like you are actually participating in an offline conversation. And I think that's why we have a gathering of thousands of people for our webinars, because of this platform, making it feel very real. We have a gathering of people who can relate to one another, and I believe that we were very successful in bringing the offline gatherings to the online platform. And I think in the fourth quarter or the year after, we will be able to open chatting for the members. And we can see a lot of great references. So if you do not have a senior woman that you can look up to in your company, you can meet those type of people through HeyJoice. For example, if men join a company, they always believe that they can become an executive because they always see these men who are executives, so they can picture themselves as executives. But when women join the company, they only see middle managers who are women, but it's very difficult to find executives who are women. And even if there are 1 or 2 executives who are women, women don't see themselves as becoming the 1 or 2 women executive. And so we provide more opportunities for our members to meet successful women with successful careers. We continue to provide this opportunity to our members. We are a B2C service as well, but we also provide B2B services. Here you can see a list of prominent companies who we work with. We don't do marketing because we don't have a marketing team, but these companies came to us for consulting or coaching programs or workshops or conferences, lectures, and marketing collaboration opportunities. And this is not just for women employees. The HeyJoice contents, it actually is aligned with the trend of ESG because diversity must be respected in the ESG context. And that's probably why many people are interested in our programs. We have an annual program with Google as well as Amazon. And so various HR programs are conducted with these prominent companies that you see on the slide. It's been 3 years since we have launched our platform, and so we don't have a lot of achievements that we can share with you, but we do have achievements. Let's say we close our doors tomorrow and someone asks me, so you worked very hard for 3 years after starting your company at a late age, and if they ask me, what did you achieve through the 3 years of HeyJoice? I want to say that we were the first to define a market for working women. And we were the company to find the power of customers who are working women. And this group of customers is very powerful. And we can also say that through HeyJoice, we found the amazing potential and value of working women in organizations, because the working women are creating amazing values within the organizations that they belong to. So here is our vision and mission. We have a very unique vision, forever like myself. So whether you are a man or a woman, you usually live as someone's father or someone's mother or someone's son or someone's daughter, but we want to live as ourselves. That is the vision that we have. And as a method to achieve this vision, our mission is to encourage women's careers. Thank you very much for your attention. I will now go back to my position as a moderator.
오늘 마지막 세션
This is the last session of the Global HR Forum. I am very happy that there are so many people with us in the session. I understand that we can open the floor for questions, and also there will be questions coming in from the online audience. Now, these two CEOs, they talked about their companies, but they didn't talk about themselves that much. So, Hyojin and Hyunju, can I call you by your first name? Okay, so Hyojin and Hyunju, we can take turns, right? The first question that I want to ask both of you is, why did you start this business? Why did you decide to start the business? I think Hyunju mentioned about this a little bit. You had a full-time job, but Hyojin, why did you start your business?
제가 너무 제
Well, I think I failed to talk about myself. I just talked about the company. I majored in mathematics, and at the age of 24, I joined a Korean bank, and I worked at the bank for 8 years. So I was a banker for 8 years. For 6 years, I worked at the headquarters, and for 2 years, I worked at a branch. So when you actually go to a branch of a bank, you meet the people sitting there in uniform. So I was sitting there in my uniform for 2 years. When I joined the bank, I thought I would work there for the rest of my life. Many people who work at a bank think that it's a lifelong job. Well, I wanted to find opportunity for growth within the bank, and I also joined the training department, which was very popular amongst the new recruits. And I was sitting in front of 8 monitors to do trading. But one day, for about 5 years, I was working very hard, and I worked and studied during the weekends. I worked all night. I am always a very high energy person, and so I worked very hard. But after about 5 years, I thought that 3 days a week, I felt really good working at the bank. But for the remaining 2 working days, I couldn't figure out if this was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. But you get used to an organization after 8 years. And I thought I could become an executive if I work hard, and if they let more women become executives. I thought maybe I could become the vice president of this bank. And then I conduct an extreme scenario testing. Well, when I do a lot of trading, we do a lot of scenario testing. And one of the scenario testing that we do is extreme scenario testing. We test for the 1%. For example, if there's a financial crisis. And then I did an extreme scenario testing for myself. So I would work very hard. And if I become an executive vice president, which is probably 1 in a million in my 60s, then I would retire, and I would be able to spend 5 million won per month, and then I would be healthy until the age of 90. Then I would die. And that would be a very satisfactory life for most people, but I thought I wouldn't be happy living like that. So I had to quit my job at the bank because that was not the life that I wanted to live. And so I thought I would just take a day off. I actually gathered a group of friends who did not have jobs to have fun. But after 2 months of quitting my job at the bank, I was meeting a friend and I talked about a fintech service in the US, and we talked about how we don't have such a service in Korea. And I became fixated. I Googled all night about this fintech service. I worked as a teller at the bank for 2 years before I quit my job, and I talked about the gap in the loan market. I could experience this gap in the loan market. I knew that this was a service that was absolutely necessary in Korea. So I wanted to bet my life on this service. I wanted to take a year off, but after just 2 months, I started my company, and tomorrow will be our 7th anniversary. So 7th anniversary, wow, it's been 3.5 years for me. I feel like I'm going to die of fatigue, and so I don't know if I can survive for 7 years. Let's go to Miss Yun.
저는
As for myself, well, I was just some ordinary office worker. I worked for 17 years in the corporate world. And when I say I started my business, people around me would say, really? You really started your own company? Because, and they were really surprised because I was just, one of those people hardworking and working for these companies. But as for me, when I was working at Kakao, we were working on launching taxi services and ride-hailing services and other very all kinds of services that would make our lives more convenient. And I thought maybe I wish there would be this app that would help me with the cleaning or home chores. And then at the Kakao, there was some suspension of this project. And I really wanted to do this application development, but I was not allowed to do so in the company. So I thought maybe I could do it myself. And at that time, I didn't really imagine myself starting a company, but there were some team members within this team, and they would say, hey, let's try this. And they kept on motivating me and encouraging me. And I said, what should I do? How can we do this? And at that time, they were saying, well, we can start a startup. And I quit my job together with my co-founders. So we all left the company together and we started this whole process. And I didn't really know that starting a company would be like this. We didn't have an office. We didn't have a laptop. So the reality really hit me hard. And at that time, we had to sell our stocks, and then we had to get some loans, and we had to get some office space, and bought some laptops, and we had to pay our employees. So this was not an easy start. Now looking back, I think that I was very much fixated on the service that I really wanted to provide to other people. And I think there's this moment when I was very sure and confident that this business would be successful. As Hyojin mentioned, I thought I could drive some change. I could make a difference. And that's why I challenged myself and started a company. And Hyunju, you might have heard this from people from HeyJoice, and I think there are these points where I would really envy you because there were these people who quit the company together with you because you were not alone. Because when you start a company, the most difficult part is team building. You have to find developers, you have to find organizers and planners, but in your case, you were not alone. You had these team members who would quit together and started this company together. So that's great. And when you are in the process of team building, there will be a lot of ups and downs and obstacles because not everything is going well, and sometimes your business would have a clear vision, and or sometimes your company will think that the vision is not clear enough, and then after 5 years or 7 years, you will continue to sail through all these storms. Now, as you were setting up your company and build your team, what was the most difficult moment and how were you able to overcome this? And first, Hyunju. For your information, I have this thing that I do not remember the difficult times in the past. That's maybe why I end up having 3 children. And people would ask me, what was the most difficult moment back then? I don't remember. So I think this is rather a positive thing for me. And then I'll try really hard to remember what was the most difficult thing. At that time, we were working on this offline to online connection. So as she mentioned, I left the company together with these co-founders who were designers and developers, and in just 3 months, we were able to develop a very good application. So this was wonderful. But at the same time, our problem was that nobody was experienced in the offline world. When you think about home cleaning service, no matter how wonderful your application is, there should be high quality cleaning service provided to begin with. And so there was this issue of recruiting managers and training them in the offline setting. And we didn't have much sense of that. We didn't have much experience in this regard. And we were just motivated and we thought, okay, let's try this. So initially, I had to go out and I had to work as a manager on these assignments. So especially the female managers and the female members of the management had to do that. And as a CEO, I had to do that, and our designer is really good at answering calls, and our developer is a very good driver. So initially, there were many difficulties and challenges. For instance, I would say, I have to go and do cleaning, so CTO, please answer the phone calls, and can you move up these boxes? So initially, we had to do multiple things at the same time. It was not easy in the beginning, but I don't know why, but I guess it was quite exciting, and we were very motivated and we were passionate. So there were many challenges, but we went through and overcame them together. So that's how we are here today. And I think these were rather pleasant memories I can reflect on. So I think you had a wonderful team in the very beginning as well.
님은 어떠셨나요?
So what about Hyojin? When did you feel a sense of crisis and how did you overcome this? I always feel like we're in a crisis, so I'm trying to think of the crisis and I can picture dozens of crises that we went through. Well, let me focus on team setting. I started alone, and just like Hyunju mentioned, I played a lot of different roles. I established my company with my retirement fund, and I created my Facebook account, and I worked on Daum and Agora, and I talked about, through postings, the challenges of the loan market. In the beginning, there was about 20 borrowers who were our initial customers, and I met them one-on-one to listen to their stories. I wanted to get to know them. And we actually had a telephone line that we opened. And so I would become the call center employee and I would answer the phones myself. And I would say, thank you for calling, and I will call back after we talk to the credit rating department. I am the credit rating department. I would look at the credit and then call them back. So no one knew us. We didn't have any money. But there was a turning point, and that was DCamp. So we were invited by DCamp, which was founded by our moderator, and they said I would be given a laptop computer if I would participate. And I would only select employees with laptop computers because we did not have any extra laptop computers. And so I actually received a MacBook, and I could give that to my employee to use within our company. And that actually became an opportunity for us, and we became a part of DCamp. And when we became a part of DCamp, we were able to receive investments from great angel investors. And Demo Day at DCamp became an opportunity for us. So it's been 7 years since we have invited our CTO to 8%, and that was a very interesting story as well. When I first started my company, there was a cafe on the first floor of our building, and on day one, I had this 5-page business plan. And because I was a mathematics major, I did not have a grand proposal that looked good, but I had this really rough business plan that I showed to our CTO at that first floor cafe. And the CTO, he said, "It's going to be very difficult, but I hope you will work hard." And so he actually helped me do the first set of codings, but he did not join the company. He was not sure if this would be possible under the regulation. And he actually had a lockup in his company because the company that he was working for was about to exit through a merger. And then a few months later, he thought about joining us, but he didn't. And then I met him a year later, and I thought I need to meet him 10 times for him to join us. But when I met him a year later, he had a very different mindset. I talked to him on Facebook. I said, "Do you regret not joining 8%?" And he said, "A little bit." And so that's why I met him, to persuade him. And by that time, he was convinced that this service would work despite the uncertainties in the regulations, because he actually experienced the platform himself by participating as an investor. So I was able to persuade him after a year. He did actually compare us with other companies to see if he would join our company or another company, but I could see that he was very interested in 8%, and I actually really wanted to work with him. So he joined as a CTO, and it's been 7 years since he has joined us. I think recruiting our CTO was the most difficult challenge that we had. So initial members, and sometimes even if they join in the beginning, they quit after a few years. And even if they work really well in the first 2 years, they decide that you have different expectations, then they would go their own way. But the CTO and yourself working together for 7 years is quite amazing. So online, we have several questions.
현주님께 들어온
There is a question to CEO Yun. And the managers at LifeLab, they can enjoy flexible work arrangements. So what is the key criteria in hiring managers? This is a very good question. There is no precondition for recruitment. Any females who are able to carry out homekeeping chores, they can sign up, except when you're very young, in your 20s. So anyone in their 30s all the way to the 60s, they can join this. And when we conduct an interview, it's not a strict interview, but because this is a service job, we would basically check the basic capabilities, whether they can communicate with their clients, whether they can understand, they have enough level of literacy. So these are the basic skills. And also we check if they have the service mindset, because they have to go to their customers' homes, and sometimes they need to be able to deal with or address some requests. And I think you need to be wise and you need to be smart, but at the same time, you need to be healthy because it involves physical labor. So as long as they are healthy and they have sound mind and service mindset, they can work with us. And we have wonderful managers, and there's this manager, a client who's been using our service for more than 50 times, and then one day she wanted to work as a manager. So she started out as a customer and then she started to work as a manager, and she's actually one of the most productive and successful managers in our pool. So anyone can use this. It's open to anyone. Thank you for your answer. And I also like to ask some other questions that we received in advance, and this is not the question, but another question. Oh, sorry. I made a mistake, so let me try again. So what I wanted to ask to Hyunju, I think I skipped that question by mistake, but another question to Hyojin.
PR
So I think we had no choice but to deal with this question. So what are the difficulties as a female entrepreneur, and how did you overcome these challenges? Well, personally, I don't think that there were major challenges because I was a woman. Starting a company is difficult in itself for both men and women. So it's not just because I'm a woman, it's because I was starting a company that I've had difficulties. I worked at a bank, and even as I was working at the bank, I noticed that it was quite male dominant, especially amongst the decision-making group. I quit my job in 2008, and there were managers, division heads, executive VP, and president, and I have never seen an executive VP who is a woman, and for division heads, there would be one out of perhaps 20 division heads. And I always thought, is this because of a difference in capabilities between men and women? And as I was working at the bank, I always thought about how high could I climb the corporate ladder? How high would I be able to go without being discriminated as a woman? And now I'm in the startup scene and I see even less women. There are so few women entrepreneurs, and we're so happy to see each other because we see so few women entrepreneurs. At startups, fundraising is very important. So you have to do IR and you go through series 1, A, B, and C for your funding. And the people who deliberate the decision for financing, most of them are men. And we see even fewer women in decision-making positions in the startup scene. And I thought if we have more women, I think this would feel less uncomfortable. Of course, we have affiliations and we have business relations, and we try to create win-win situations through investments, but you feel more comfortable if you are of the same gender. And we cannot call these people big brother in the Korean language because we are not men. And so that is something that I would like to see improved. So many women entrepreneurs try to bet on their services itself, and they try to bet with the results that they have using statistics. Well, in reality, if we work with venture capitals, we see that only 7% of those who deliberate funding is women. Well, sometimes this is said to be up to 9 to 10% because it's grown in the last few years. But not only in Silicon Valley, but in Korea, we start to think about how there is a gender bias investment. We're not saying that we want a feminist-based funding, but half of the world population are women, half of the consumers are women, half the people working at companies are women these days. But if we look at a product or services from the lens of a specific gender, then you may miss out on investment opportunities. And that is why the capital side is also looking to increase the women representation in their decision for funding so that they do not miss out on investment opportunities. And I think we see such an awareness in Korean VCs as well. That is why we see an increase in the number of women working on deliberating funding. So we're talking about investments. When we start a company, we always say that there are three big challenges. First is team setting, second is funding, and third is scale-ups. I think related to investment, I do have quite a few questions.
회사 모두 크게
So these two companies have received large funding, and I really am quite envious and I have huge respect. So first of all, Hyojin, how much funding have you received? In what series, and how much did you receive? And what was the most difficult challenge that you had to overcome in the process of fundraising? Any episodes?
네. 우리 팀은
Well, for our team, we received Series C funding and we closed that last week, and we actually received about 44 billion won, and we actually received this funding from VRA Fund Capital in Silicon Valley, and they actually were called Nokia Ventures in the past. And they are a company that makes a lot of global investments. They were the first institutional investor for PayPal, as well as Afterpay and Affirm. So they have invested in Decacon companies, and they have these companies within their portfolio. We are the first Korean fintech company that they invested in. They do have a Korean office, and they are looking to increase investments in the Korean market. They have a positive view about the Korean market, and I think that's why we received the Series C investment from them. Well, it seems that you did not have any difficulties in receiving funding because you had over 40 billion won in investments. It feels like you have no worries in the world. Yes, it was very difficult. That process was very difficult. The result was good, but we went through great difficulties for a very long time because we had to prove the potential of the Korean market, and we had to prove the ability of execution on our part, and we had to prove the potential for growth. And so we went through lengthy dialogue. But because they had a positive view about the Korean market, in particular, the mega trends in the digital scene and the opportunities in the market. And of course, we do have regulatory uncertainties, but we are in a situation where these uncertainties are being eliminated. And so now they see that uncertainties are being eliminated in a good market. And so I think that provided a good opportunity for us. How long did this round take? We started in the spring, so about 7 months. It took us 7 months to close this series. Congratulations.
올해
And Hyunju, you just finished another round of fundraising this year. How was it? And what was the most memorable moment? Any difficult time? I don't know why, but our fundraising rounds are always in the winter. And then as we were walking on the streets in this very cold weather, we feel, oh, it's so cold and it's not easy. And earlier this year, we completed Series C, so it's been a while. So now I guess I forgot about it. But we were able to receive about 35.5 billion won, and with a valuation of more than 100 billion won. I think we have similar challenges all the time whenever we do fundraising. Those who come to us are young officers who would evaluate on this business model, and they would say, oh, we're actually using your service. So these young evaluators, they know us, and they actually are customers of the cleaning lab. So they know a lot about our business, and they would talk about these managers that they've experienced, and they would even make some suggestions or recommendations. So I don't even have to do IR. But the problem is the higher level decision makers who would deliberate on our funding, because these higher level people, they're usually male, and the junior officers would say, this is the cleaning lab, and they use the application, and managers would go to these customers' homes once or twice a month. And then the senior officer would say, wait a minute, this manager that comes to our home has been with us for 15 years. So who's going to use this application? So they don't really understand. Oh, of course, they are not our target customers, and things are changing these days. And this is not a completely new market. But this market itself is changing rapidly, and the startup is trying to follow this new trend. But some people are just evaluating these business proposals based on their old understanding. And they will say, what's the point of metaverse? You need to have face-to-face meetings. These are the kinds of comments that they will make. But I think you have to really understand that things are changing rapidly. And as you are going through this fundraising, it is not easy to convince them of the value of our business. And I think that this is the market that I really saw huge potential of. Maybe I was not very good at explaining this because it was so obvious to me, but for other people, it may not have been that obvious. So we had to provide data. We had to provide them with more convincing arguments. And I think I learned a lot in this process. Of course, there are many different challenges in terms of IR, but then as I gained more experience, I think I was getting better at investor relations. Initially, I wasn't very good at it, so I just got angry emotionally, but now I think I know how to take care of the situation. I can even just wake up and recite whatever argument that I would have to present. So I would like to ask you to go and try and talk to various investors and venture capitalists and gain that experience. Yes, I agree. Compared to these two companies, I have only received a very small amount of investment, but I heard these comments from these officers who would say, my wives do not want to work, my mothers do not want to work, and I don't know whether you really want to meet with other females. So these were the kinds of comments that I received quite often from male evaluators. So this is going to be my final request. Starting a business is not easy, and so you're going through a difficult life as a CEO, but I'm sure you have your vision and you have your mission. But when you feel like you're letting down and you're feeling very depressed, how do you overcome this? And is there any tips? Who's going to go first? Hyunju? There are many startup CEOs and founders, and I think that they started their company for a similar reason, because I don't think they started their business for the purpose of money or profit, because if you want to pursue money, you have to invest in bitcoins or other cryptocurrencies. But the reason why I started my business is because there was this change that I wanted to make to benefit other people, to help other people. I think that was the main motivation. So I think you really need to remind yourself of that, and you need to remember that and keep it to your heart. For me, creating and developing a good service was my initial motivation. And then later, now I am motivated to create a good working environment, not only for our employees, but also for the managers and our customers. So I want to build a better platform for all of you, all of us. I think this is rather mission or conviction that you have. And if you keep following that and try to pursue your vision, I think profit will come along the way, and you will be able to continue on with your journey. So I hope that you will remember that. Thank you.
말씀 부탁드립니다.
Yes, Hyojin, your final comments, I can really relate to that. Well, there's so many difficulties along the way, and at times you feel like you don't know what you're doing. And it's very difficult to overcome these difficulties if you focus on just profits. But you're betting your life on this. Many of the entrepreneurs bet their life on their startups. So you have to remind yourself why you're betting your life on this. And those who are participating in our company, those who are investing, they are betting on our company. Recently, I had a realization that if I am not confident about my company, nobody will bet on my company. So the entrepreneurs, we have to focus on the problem that we had focused on when we started our company. We have to focus on what we're trying to solve with our company. Well, thank you very much in talking about why you started your company and what drove you to start your companies. I think this is something that all entrepreneurs can relate to. Yesterday, I met someone who was an entrepreneur, but who became an executive at a large company. And I said, doesn't it feel great to receive a wage instead of handing out wages? And that person said, it feels really good. And it feels really good because I don't have to say, don't waste paper, don't use color printer too much, because that's what that person did while that person was an entrepreneur. So just like you mentioned, entrepreneurship is something that you can only realize through experience. How do we want to live now? If you think about that, then you cannot be an entrepreneur because there are so many difficulties along the way. But if you think about your deathbed, I think this is what I want to do when I look back on my life on my deathbed. And so I'm sure that this is what I want to do with my life if I look back on my life just before death. I want to make a contribution to our family, to our society. That is why I am doing this work. And I remind myself of this motivation all the time. And there may be some of you in the audience who are preparing to start a company, or those who are working at a large company. Wherever you are in your life, I hope that you will think about what motivates you. Well, even as I live my today, I'm not sure what I'm going to do tomorrow. Maybe I will not be an entrepreneur in the next few years, but at this moment, it feels great to meet women entrepreneurs on the panel with me who are driving their lives towards success. I hope this session proved to be informative for everyone here today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to our panelists. Another round of applause, please. Thank you. So many people were nodding away while they were listening to this session. We were able to listen to some frank dialogue. This is something that we cannot listen to anywhere else. Thank you very much for sharing your stories with us. Thank you very much. Time really does fly by. We have ended the last session of Global HR Forum 2021. I hope that your 2 days with us proved to be informative. So as we overcome the pandemic together around the world, now is the time for us to forecast the future and prepare for the future. The future may have looked quite scary at the beginning of the pandemic, but now we see more clearly what we need to do. Through ESG, digital transformation, and sustainable future, we will need to continue to make preparations for the future. We have listened to many speakers under these 3 topics, and we also need to make sure that we use this knowledge and information as a stepping stone to foster talent for the future. As many people say, I hope that everything that we have discussed today proves to be the step forward for a brighter future. When we end the forum, we will send out messages to ask you for your feedback. We look forward to your feedback, and we hope that your feedback will be utilized for a better forum in the future. Thank you very much for joining us both yesterday and today through our online and offline platform. Thank you for your participation. This brings us to the end of the 2021 Global HR Forum. I do hope that the energy that you were charged with during the last 2 days will propel you to the year end, and I hope you have a great evening. Thank you very much.